Good afternoon. Today is the 19th of May and it's time for yet another not particularly interesting, quite vague and probably very boring vlog. The topic for today comes from one of my long-standing channel viewers, and earlier this month he asked me a question, and having thought about it, I think this is quite an interesting one. It's what is the cheapest classic car that you can buy for a budget of between £600 and £2,000? What I think he meant by that is, what's the best classic car for that budget? And the answer, well, there isn't really an answer to this question. If you want me to start sort of recommending makes and models and things like that, and you know, specific ones that are right now on, I don't know, eBay, Auto Trader, Car and Classic, things like that, then that's not really going to work particularly. I'm driving a car that cost £1,000 to buy, which is the old Volvo 460. And how much work have we done to this car since I bought it? Oh, rattly dash into neutral, there we go. A lot. An awful lot of work. Like, more work than possibly might have been economical, really. This car was a Category D write-off many years ago, and so it was a little bit cheaper than otherwise it would have been. Probably maybe 25% cheaper, I don't really know. But it's not really a case of, if you're looking for a classic, let's just define that as a car that's over 20 years old. It's not really the case of what makes and models to buy. It's very much a case of kind of what's actually out there in your local area, and you know, what kind of conditions it's in, what kind of provenance does it have, does it have any service history, is it exhibiting a lot of the common faults that those particular cars have, and how expensive is it going to be to fix? There really isn't an answer to this question, and there are a few reasons to that. One is that the second-hand car market in this country, and that does include classics to some extent, because classic cars are just really old second-hand cars. As Richard Sutton once said on Deals on Wheels many years ago, they're just very old second-hand cars, which is exactly what they are. This is a very old second-hand car. It's a lovely old second-hand car, but it is a very old second-hand car. That's just the way that it is. And if you buy really at the bottom end of the market, it's almost like a lot of the time you can be buying twice. Now, you might get an absolute bargain. We have recently on the channel in the last few months had the famous £100 Renault Clio. The famous £100 Renault Clio actually was bought for £100 with an MOT. Now, that doesn't normally happen. That is not the case anymore. It used to happen. It used to happen a fair bit back in the day, but it doesn't anymore. In the last 2 years, since about May 2021, second-hand prices for cars are up by 30 to 50%, something like that. And so these things are rare. But the classics, it's maybe more difficult because the cars are so difficult to value. They're so hard to value. Take, for example, this Volvo 460. I paid £1,000 for it, which is £1 over no budget reviews money. But some of these are now worth £4,000 more for a really good one. But the ones in the middle are very difficult to value. That's the case with loads of stuff. I've seen a Montego advertised for something like £8,000 to £10,000, and you might be able to pick like a rough 1.6L up at some points for about £800 to £900 of an MOT. the prices are all over the place, but obviously those really cheap ones of the lower end are going to need a lot of work. They just will. And so rather than kind of trying to find one and going, you know, miles and miles out of your way to find something that needs an absolute ton of work, which, you know, this car, although it's generally in very, very good condition, battery dashboard is just a common issue with these, and you know, this one has actually worked better than it was because Mr. Coleman's had a look at it for me. But it's just not really the case that you can be generally so specific. It's a lot of the time something that you just need to be very flexible about what's in your area, what sort of condition it's in, and what sort of ownership it's had. And that's really all I can say. If you find a car that, say, a friend of a friend's running, or you know someone who's given up driving, that might be a good option. But it would depend on how they've looked after it. This car is almost 33 years old, and it's actually been quite well looked after, but one thing we found was that the cam belt had never been changed in it. Yes, that's right, a cam belt that was 33 years old was actually in this car. And so, just because it looks kind of good, it's the photographs and stuff, doesn't necessarily mean that it's necessarily had all the things done on time. The oil's been changed in this car, without a doubt. It's been changed actually pretty recently. And you know, to find one that's not rusty and things like that, and to find one with a nice interior as this does, is amazing. So I'm very happy with the purchase that we have, even if it's not a lot of work done to it. But you might find that, like with the other Volvo that I had, which I paid more money for, about £1,400, that there's something lurking underneath. And in this case, it needed basically half the engine rebuilding and lots of other things, which was uneconomical. So it's just really more of a sort of case of being very patient if you're really set on one specific make or model, or just basically seeing what's around. And that's really the best way to go about it. Because if you buy a really cheap car for £600, that might not end very well for you. You know, I recently had a look around to see what I could find for that kind of money, and I really couldn't find anything. So you'll probably look at an MOT failure or something like that at that stage. The MOTs themselves aren't that expensive, but goodness knows how much work a car like that's going to require. I mean, it really depends on what exactly it is that you want to do. If you're somebody who's a very handy home mechanic and you're into that kind of stuff, then that might be a good thing for you to sort of look into. But someone like me, I just like driving the cars, really. I don't really like fixing them, and I can't fix them because I'm too incompetent, so that's why I don't do it. Fortunately, I have Mr. Coleman to look after our, you know, two very old and sometimes broken cars. I've got him, and he's a very, very reasonable person indeed. So it's just one of these things. It's an impossible thing to quantify these days, and that's why people ask me, you know, what is the best car I should buy for this money? And often, if you're on the lower end and stuff, you've got a reduced budget, but it's very much what is out there, which is in good condition and has good provenance. That's about it. There are obviously some cars I would probably totally avoid, and City Rover would be one of them, but never buy one of those. But sometimes that car can be really well looked after, and they can be just brilliant, and if they're not necessarily the ones you would have bought first of all. These Volvo 460s were very unloved for a really long time, and now they've had a bit of a resurgence for some reason, which you know, I'm happy. But anyway, I think that's about it. So thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below, and we shall see you again soon for more really incoherent rambling.